victims ranged in age from 6 months to 12 years old.
6 months? How do you, what? What's good, YouTube? Today we're going to be reacting to what happens to predators behind bars. But if you guys are watching this on YouTube, make sure to go follow my Twitch. But that's enough talking. Let's get straight into it.
Well, if it's all right, I'd like to tell you where it started.
Go ahead.
All right, well, he was my bunkie, and I had found out that he was in prison for child molestation. So that night he was trying to justify why he did it, and I just told him to be quiet, and he would have to leave in the morning to find a new cell. But he continued to talk about it and try to justify it, so I wrapped a cord around his neck and I took his life.
This is Steven Sanderson, an inmate at the Saginaw Correctional Facility
W
in
Mans.
Freeland, and the killer of his fellow inmate Theodore Dyer, a convicted child molester.
Yeah, he looked
when
like
Steven
one.
was agitated by Dyer's stories of crime, he took the opportunity and did what he thought was best in the time given. Steven has won himself a place among dozens of inmates around the world who can't even stand to be in the same room as a child molester, because to them, a prison sentence is not any different from a death sentence. In this video, we're taking you through the stories of some of the most high-profile child molesters who were killed or brutally attacked in jail. Let's get started. Richard Huckle, Britain's worst pedophile. This is Richard William Huckle, an Englishman who worked as a freelance photographer in Malaysia and participated in the local community before moving there permanently in 2010. He hoped to establish himself as a successful photographer and build a reputation in the community. Huckle also worked part-time for the Nike football club in Malaysia.
Nike?
But even with such a full schedule, he made time for his crime. In 2014, the police discovered a network of pedophiles operating on a dark web network called the Love Zone. They identified a member who always made posts using the greeting, "Hias," and had a distinctive freckle on one of his fingers. The police assumed the identity of the member Shannon McCool and used his website to catch other pedophiles. They rescued 85 children from ongoing abuse and arrested hundreds of pedophiles, one of which was yours truly. Due to the number of children he had abused and the attitude of his posts, the police discovered his real identity and alerted the National Crime Agency. And Huckle was arrested at Gatwick Airport on December 19, 2014. Huckle had no criminal record.
Look at this dude, he looks
released him
fucking
on bail
retarded.
under the condition that he lives with his parents. However, his mother confronted him about the allegations, and he drunkenly admitted to raping children aged 3 to 13, after which...
3? Off topic, but like, what makes you want to do that? Like
his parents contacted the
what
police and implored them
what
to
makes
arrest
someone
him.
to do that? Like,
He was rearrested and charged with 91
rearrested?
counts. He was denied bail by the police and imprisoned at HMP Lewis before being transferred to HMP Belmarsh in London to await trial. At an initial hearing at the Old Bailey in January of 2016, Huckle pled not guilty to all 91 charges, which took over an hour to read in court. During a preliminary trial hearing in April, Huckle pled guilty to 71 of the 91 charges he was facing after a request to watch all of the evidence against him in court. His victims ranged in age from 6 months to 12 years.
What? Hang on.
6 months, one of the 91 charges he was facing after a request to watch all of the evidence against him in court. His victims ranged in age from 6 months to 12 years old.
6 months? How do you, what?
He boasted about his crimes to
Hang on. How do you even get to the baby at 6 months? Isn't the what?
other pedophiles
We're not even
posting such comments.
We're
as,
not
quote,
even halfway
"Hit
through
the
the
jackpot.
video.
A 3-year-old girl as loyal to me as my dog, and nobody seemed to care. Impoverished kids are definitely much easier to seduce than middle-class kids." In the end, Richard Huckle was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 25 years, making him one of the UK's most prolific child sex offenders. His crimes shocked the nation, and his case was widely covered by the media. But the dark story didn't end there. In the years that followed Huckel's conviction, it emerged that he had made plans to abuse more children in the Philippines. The true scale of Huckel's depravity was only fully understood after his death. In October of 2019, he was found dead in his prison cell, having been stabbed to death by a fellow inmate.
Good.
The killer inmate, Paul Fitzgerald, was said to have attacked as revenge for Huckel's crimes against children. The tragic and dark story of Richard Huckel serves as a chilling reminder of the depths of human depravity and the damage that can be caused by those who seek to harm the innocent. Roy William Whiting.
Ooh.
This is Sarah Payne,
Aww.
a harmless 8-year-old girl with the sweetest of smiles who was playing hide-and-seek with her siblings, Lee, Luke, and Charlotte, at her grandparents' house in Kingston Gorse, West Sussex. Sarah had hit her head and ran off crying, just meters away from her older brothers who were out of sight. A frantic search began, but the days turned into weeks, and the weeks
You're
turned
telling me
into
there was a random
16
man in the
agonizing
woods?
days.
That's
Finally, her naked
Wow.
body was discovered in a shallow grave a few miles away, her angelic face forever frozen in terror and pain. The police immediately launched a manhunt, determined to bring the monster responsible to justice. But as the investigation dragged on, hope began to fade. It wasn't until months later that they finally had a suspect in their sights.
Damn, he had a glow up.
Yours truly. Roy was arrested several weeks later after a man who knew him came forward, and a knife was found hidden in his car. In June of that year, Roy admitted charges of abduction and indecent assault and was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Despite a psychiatrist's warning that he was likely to reoffend,
Wait.
Roy...
How many years?
Psychiatrist's warning that he was likely to... Despite a psychiatrist's an indecent assault and was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Despite a psychiatrist's warning that he was likely to reoffend, Roy was released from prison in November of 1997 after serving just over 2 years of his sentence.
If you guys watched my last video, they got life and like for killing, like it was kids kill. Oh my god! What the?
Knew
Bro.
him came forward.
Like I said, if you guys, they got life, and we got a child predator getting 4 years, and then got out a year later.
And a knife was found 4 years in prison.
Wow.
Despite a psychiatrist's warning that he was likely to
This
reoffend,
system
Roy
is
was
messed up,
released
bro.
from prison in November of 1997 after serving just over 2 years of his sentence. He was one of the first people in Britain to go on the sex offenders register, but he was forced to serve an extra 5 months in prison for refusing to participate in a sex offender rehabilitation program. In November of 2002, Roy was given a 50-year minimum sentence by Home Secretary David Blunkett, meaning he would not be released from prison until 2051 at the age of 92. Roy appealed against the ruling, and in 2010, the High Court reduced his minimum term to 40 years, making him eligible for parole at the age of 82. Roy's time in prison was a living hell. The violence and tragedy that he endured left a lasting mark on his body and soul. In 2002, he was attacked by convicted murderer Ricky Tregaskis with a razor, leaving a 6-inch scar on his cheek. In 2011, he was stabbed in the eye by another inmate, and in 2018, he was viciously attacked by 2 prisoners in his cell at Wakefield Prison. The attackers had smuggled blades into the wing and punched and kicked Roy in the face and upper body before stabbing him multiple times. Roy crawled under his bed to protect himself, but the attackers did not stop until the door was forced open. Roy said he had never had any trouble with his attackers, and he was used to being called nonce, pedophile, and baby killer by inmates. It's a miracle he survived, but it's inevitable that if he puts his guard down again, he won't make it out alive. Ashley James Brofo. This is 39-year-old Ashley James Brofo, whose darkness of life began before he was even born.
He does not look like an Ashley James Brofo.
His mother didn't want him, so he was raised by his grandmother alongside his stepbrother Terrence Kelly. It was a childhood filled with abuse and violence, which would shape Brofo's twisted mind and make him every parent's worst nightmare. In July of 2022, the full extent of his depravity was revealed in a sentencing hearing in Berth District Court. A young girl was staying with her step-grandparents during the school holidays. She innocently asked if she could walk their dog alone to the park. Brofo saw her near the park and approached her from behind, luring her with a burger from Hungry Jack's. He took her hand and lured her to his house.
You want a burger, little girl?
Once inside, Brofo assaulted and exposed himself to the girl. She tried to leave, but he lured her to his bedroom. In the house was also his carer,
Oh, God,
who had
help
seen
me.
him enter the house with the child. He immediately tried to interrupt the assault by banging on the front door. The girl was able to escape, running back to her grandparents' house.
Oh,
to
she
report the
escaped?
incident. Brofo's lawyer tried to blame his client's quote-unquote opportunistic offense on his intellectual disability and schizophrenia. But the state prosecutor argued that it was only because Brofo's carer happened to visit that the girl was able to escape. Brofo pled guilty to 2 counts of indecently dealing with a child under 13 and encouraging a child to engage in sexual acts. He faced up to 20 years in Hakia prison in Australia, but he had only served 1 year before he met his unfortunate end.
Ooh.
On the 9th of
Wow,
March
wow.
2023, Brofo was found unresponsive in his cell at Perth's Hakia prison. The staff provided first aid and paramedics attended the scene, but they were unable to revive him. The homicide squad is treating his death as suspicious, and several male prisoners are assisting detectives with their inquiries. DeAndre Austin. This is DeAndre Austin, a convicted rapist charged with committing 13 sexual offenses on his 3 minor nieces, who will identify as Jane Doe 1,
Niece?
2, and 3. He periodically shared quarters with them during the period from 2002 to 2006, which gave him his lustful opportunities. The accommodation was so crowded that Jane Doe 1 slept on a fold-out bed in the living room, while the defendant slept on a couch about 4 feet away. During the winter of 2001, he began rubbing her leg when they were alone in the apartment. Around Valentine's Day of 2002, he began feeling, now quoting the Jane Doe, hands touching on my body in a weird way. By the time she was 10 years old, DeAndre was manhandling her and doing explicit things to her. This type of pedophilic behavior continued with all 3 girls. And the worst part was, their grandparents didn't believe them.
Wow.
Austin was sentenced in 2008 to a life
That's
sentence
gotta
with
be
the
the-
possibility
wow,
of
that's
parole
gotta be
for the
so bad.
continuous sexual
Oh my-
assault of his 3 elementary school-age nieces.
Wow, that's gotta be the worst feeling.
That's where he met his cellmate, Rodney Jordan, who was serving a 2-year term for a first-degree burglary conviction from Los Angeles County. On the 15th of October 2020, DeAndre Austin was pronounced dead at 6:30 p.m., less than an hour after correctional officers responded to a report of a man down in his cell, according to a news release from the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. Authorities placed Austin's cellmate, 29-year-old Rodney Jordan, in a segregated cell, and it's considered to be the prime suspect in Austin's death, but it's still unclear how exactly Austin died. So to
Unclear.
all
What you
child
mean? He got
molesters
murdered.
and sex offenders, this is the unquestionable fate behind bars. Despite having a maximum security prison, a sex offender will fear for his safety everywhere he goes.
He
And while
should.
some might be left with bruises and marks, none of them are forgetting for 1 second that at any moment, their fate can be no different than these child molesters who were killed.
Good, bro. I feel like predators should just get the life sentence. Just get the death sentence, bro. Not even life in prison. They don't even deserve to live. Just fucking